Hello, this will be a quick discussion of the January 13th balance patch changes to Guardian and WvW. Some of these changes were previewed in December, such as the changes to the Zeal trait line, and some small buffs to Guardian and Dragon Hunter, while other changes such as the nerfs to Luminary were not previewed. In the Zeal trait line, we have 2 traits moving, 1 new trait, and 2 traits getting small adjustments. The first trait change is Symbolic Avenger. The previous lower Major Grandmaster trait has been moved to the Minor Grandmaster trait, replacing the previous trait, Symbolic Power. The second trait movement is the top Major Master trait, Furious Focus, moving to replace the bottom Major Grandmaster trait. This trait is also receiving a rework. Previously, while having Fury, the trait would apply vulnerability when attacking enemies. Now, while having Fury, the trait provides a 10% damage increase and a 33% movement speed increase, in addition to creating a lesser symbol of blades when you activate Virtue Skill 1. The new trait that replaces the top Major Master trait is Renewing Splendor. This new trait heals yourself when you create a light field or finish a combo in a light field, with an ICD of 3 seconds. The last trait change is a small adjustment to the minor adept trait, Zealous Resolution. Previously, this trait would trigger when an enemy hits you below the health threshold of 75%. This trait now triggers when you strike an enemy below the health threshold of 75%. For Guardian, the base F3 Virtue of Courage now breaks stun on yourself. Dragon Hunter's F3 Shield of Courage now breaks stun on yourself. According to the balance patch preview notes, Symbol of Energy, Longbow 4 on Guardian, the projectile fired by the skill should now be unblockable. However, the tooltip does not state it as unblockable, and from my testing, the skill is still blockable. This patch, Luminary received 4 direct nerfs to their traits, a nerf to their F2, and a nerf to Valorous Stance. The first nerf was to Luminary's Blessing. This is an effect associated with the trait Light's Gift, which is the minor master trait in Luminary. This effect is given by using your F3 skill, and by equipping weapons in Radiant Forge. This had its damage reduction reduced from 7% to 5%, and both its base heal and healing coefficient reduced. The second nerf was to Radiant Armaments. This is the minor Grandmaster trait in Luminary, which provides different effects when you have different weapons equipped in Radiant Forge, which persists for a little while after you leave the Forge. This was a specific nerf to the Staff weapon, which had its outgoing healing reduced from 15% to 10%. The third nerf is to Illuminating Inspiration, the top Major Grandmaster trait in Luminary. This had its Virtue's cooldown reduction per Radiant weapon equipped reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. The fourth nerf is to Sovereign of Light, the middle Major Grandmaster trait in Luminary. This trait detonates light auras to deal damage, heal, and provide resolution, and this had its base healing and healing coefficient nerfed. The fifth nerf is to Radiant Resolve, the F2 on Luminary. This had its base healing and healing coefficient both nerfed. The final nerf was to Valorous Stance, Luminary's utility skill that provides stability. In full boon duration at 100%, this provides 8 seconds of stability, and it has been nerfed from a 30-second cooldown to a 40-second cooldown. So, we've talked about the Zeal trait changes, we've talked about the small changes to Guardian and Dragon Hunter, and we've talked about the Luminary nerfs. So what does this mean for WvW gameplay, and how is this going to affect the larger overall Zerg meta? The Zeal trait changes impact is going to be quite limited for large-scale Zerg fights, primarily due to the current role most Guardians fill in structured WvW is main stab as a Luminary, and they get more value out of Virtues and Valor, or Virtues and Honor. Builds that wanted to take Zeal already won't have too much consideration changes. However, builds like Connie Firebrand that wanted to take Shattered Ages previously now might want to take Furious Focus for another symbol, meaning more Vol and cover boons. This will be a slight damage increase for DPS Guardian builds as well. With the recent nerfs to Engineer, the gap between Engineer and other high melee cleave DPS is getting smaller. One of my zergs today, I found a DPS Luminary performing quite well while running Zeal. The bigger impact of this patch is going to be the Luminary. Since Visions of Eternity came out, the vast majority of organized groups have been running Luminary as main stab. Guardians always had incredible access to stab, but Luminary has an extra stab source, built-in Condi Cleanse, healing, and blocks for Shroud 5. These nerfs, in my opinion, were well deserved, and it's targeted both of the popular Luminary builds, Valor and Honor. Valor, you wanted to play for high resets of your F3 with Aegis to have more resistance and stability. Whereas for Honor, you would want to be playing for the bigger symbols and the symbol on the healing skill. And this would give you passive healing as well to your Zerg, and longer symbols, more cover booms. Usually pair this with more healing as well. I like that these nerfs target both of the popular builds, both in Valor and Honor, but these nerfs aren't going to knock Luminary out of the meta. But I like that the decision making is more meaningful now. Previously, you could still get away with 100% soul stability on Valor Luminary, even without Mace for an extra Aegis proc. But now, deep into a fight, your ability to maintain that is quite questionable. So this is leading me to make decisions from fight to fight. Can I get away with bringing Axe because I want more pulls? Is someone else in my party going to give me that little bit of stability to cover that? Do I need to bring Mace because I don't have that? Do I want Valorous Stance for the easier to use stability, or do I want to run the stun break and get more resets in Valor because it still gives Aegis? Can I afford to take Feel My Wrath for more boon output, or do I need to take Renewed Focus so I can get another full reset of my F3? These kind of decision makings now I find making adaptations depending on what party I'm in and who we're fighting and what their playstyle is. And I'm really enjoying these changes to Luminary so far.